personally think the Fed should drop rates. I think they really slowed us down. There's no inflation. I would say in terms of quantitative tightening, it should actually now be quantitative easing. Very little, if any, inflation. And I think they should drop rates and they should get rid of quantitative tightening. You would see a rocket ship. Despite that, we're doing very well.
That, of course, was President Trump criticizing the Federal Reserve today over interest rates. This comes as the president says he plans to nominate 2012 presidential candidate and former Godfather's Pizza CEO Herman Cain to the Federal Reserve Board. And if you don't remember who Cain was, this clip might jog your memory.
999. So it is not a gimmick.
You ought to get some sort of toll-free number. Herman Cain, you dial 999, you get a free pizza. Come on.
Well, meanwhile, the president is touting the latest jobs report. It shows the U.S. economy added 196,000 jobs in March, while the unemployment rate remained essentially the same, 3.8%. Joining me now from Washington, Heather Long. She's an economics correspondent for the Washington Post. Okay, Heather, so we heard the president slam the Fed over interest rates. We know he's been saying this for some time now. How likely is this strategy of intimidation going to actually sway the Fed?
Well, the Fed has gone on pause this year. They've said they do not intend to raise interest rates at all this year. He also talked about that quantitative easing program that the president would like to see basically go on hold and stop. The Fed isn't stopping it right away, but they are stopping it a lot sooner than they originally planned to. So the Fed likes to say they're independent of politics, but there was perhaps some sway from all of Trump's pressure.
I want to ask you also about Herman Cain. Oddly, after running that bite, I really want a pepperoni pizza at this point. What do you say? Would he be up for the job as Federal Reserve Board, on the Federal Reserve Board? What do you think his biggest challenges would be to get confirmed?
The biggest challenge is no doubt 4 women have accused Herman Cain of sexual harassment. 2 of those women ended up settling with one of his former employers. That's going to be a very difficult lift to get through, even among Republicans in the Senate, to have someone like that. There's been a real push among economists and at the Federal Reserve to improve the climate for females, particularly female economists, and to put someone who has been accused by so many women of sexual harassment. I think that's not sitting well from what we're hearing on the Hill.
It's interesting to hear you say that. You know, the U.S. economy added 196,000 jobs in March. What are economists saying about this news?
There's no doubt that the U.S. economy is in a very good place right now. Hiring remains strong, especially encouraging to see wages finally rising and rising a good bit above inflation, 3.2% wage increases in the past year for the typical worker. I always summarize it this way. We're in a good but not great economy this year, so there's nothing to panic about, no recession on the horizon, but we're probably not going to have quite as strong of a year as we did last year.
So you're saying no recession, potentially. In the past, we've sort of talked about some predictions that 2020, the presidential election, could bring some economic headwinds. Do you think that's still the case?
Well, nobody ever knows what's going to happen that far.
I know. We always like to ask you that. I know.
I wish I knew. My stock portfolio would be doing better. But I always like to say it like this. It's kind of like when you watch your child ride a bicycle. You know, as the child slows down, it's more easy for them to tip over, you know, for something to knock them off course. And the same is true for the economy. We are no doubt slowing down. The question is, how slow are we going to get this year as the tax cuts fade and as some of that government spending stimulus starts to recede? You know, that the economy is no doubt slowing. Are we going to get to a point where something could tip it over? That's possible. Right now, again, it looks a little bit unlikely that we would see, though, a recession, a true negative growth contraction in the coming months.
I've never heard that bicycle analogy. That is so great. I kind of understood recession for the first time based on that analogy, Heather. You know, finally, we know the president is actually visiting the border today, contemplating the idea of maybe placing tariffs on cars from Mexico if they don't help with illegal immigration. What impact could we see on the U.S. economy, let's say, if he does push that forward?
Look, would be a huge impact, and not just on avocados and tequila and these sorts of fun products we all enjoy from Mexico. There's a reason that President Trump's top economic advisors have been telling him, do not do this. The economic ramifications would be particularly substantial on the auto sector, as you mentioned. We've heard estimates from experts that are saying potentially 1 million jobs at risk. Now, that obviously wouldn't happen overnight, and the border would have to be shut down for a significant period of time to see anything at that level of impact. But again, the U.S., Mexican, and Canadian economies are heavily tied together, and why, as President Trump heads into a key election year, would he want to put any jobs at risk in this country to shut down the border is really mind-boggling for many economists.
Heather Long with the Washington Post. Heather, grateful you could join us.
Thank you.